Who's potentially in the running to win an award like this?
I guess we'll see. We're holding a pitch competition, a $100,000 pitch competition, where we'll be investing in a minority or a woman-founded startup. We believe that these demographics of companies are underrepresented, and we want to bring more awareness to this. So we partnered with E40, who's a legendary hip-hop artist, Republic, which is a platform for non-accredited investors to invest in startups for little amounts of money, and Damon John is going to be helping us judge. And, hopefully we'll find a really great company.
Cam, how did the idea to create this pitch competition come to be?
Well, I've done a few in the past. I did a $10,000 one, I did a $25,000 one, and we'll use Convos, the app, as the platform to allow people to pitch because it's easier to see people face to face. But this time I want to go a little bit bigger because I just feel like there's just a lack of awareness for companies like this. In Silicon Valley, there's always a lot of people investing in companies that don't normally look like me. And I just came from a big tech summit this weekend in Oakland called Afro Tech, and there was like 10,000 entrepreneurs and investors and engineers. And when people say that they can't find African-American startups to invest in, it just sounds a little crazy to me. So we're trying to do what we can to create more awareness.
Yeah, I think this is really interesting, the ways in which we're trying to reassure entrepreneurs that there are avenues to get financing. We talked about Jamie Dimon on 60 Minutes last night doing so much for the city of Detroit. Cam, with what you're doing, what would you tell a young startup founder in terms of trying to get access to these avenues of capital?
Relationships have a lot to do with it, but I believe information and relationships are the two things that separates the people in Silicon Valley and the people that have access to the information and, people in my community. So I'm trying to do what I can to get more information out there, and I believe that all of us in the investment community have a responsibility to do this, especially in the minority and women world, because, these companies are underfunded, but it's an opportunity for innovation that could happen. These people are solving new and unique problems, and I think the only thing in their way is capital.
In terms of the innovation, what are the types of startups or the types of businesses that you're most interested in seeing and funding?
Recently I saw a platform called Valance, which is like a LinkedIn for African-American professionals. And I know the founder, Kobe Fuller, who's a very brilliant person. And, platforms like that are needed because when I go into the tech space, I'm looking and I'm trying to find diverse candidates. And I believe it works like this. You have an LP base of people that are majority of white males that invest in venture capital firms. And then those venture capital firms are white males that invest in white males that look like them. And then those white males hire their friends and their network. And then you have recruiters who are in the business of filling spaces. And when they fill those spaces, they're filling them with a lot of white males. And then somebody like me comes along and says, hey, I need some diverse candidates. And at one point I was getting 30 candidates a month. And then when I said I only wanted women or minorities, then I started getting 2 candidates a month. So I think that's a real problem that exists, and we got to do more to change stuff like that.
Cam, we've had you on in the past talk about your investments, whether it's Maker or Ring or Lyft. Give us your sense of where you think valuations are right now. Are you finding cheap stuff to invest in? And specifically on Lyft, where are you on ride sharing right now?
I'm still definitely bullish on Lyft. When it comes to cheap companies, I'm very early with companies. I find, seed and Series A companies, and I have a lot of access. So I'm definitely being able to find a lot of companies that I believe are diamonds in the rough. You got some investors that'll complain that out of the accelerators or incubators, Y Combinator or whatever other accelerators, that some of the valuations are getting a bit high. But for me, I'm a very early stage investor, and I'm not investing like a VC. Or investing other people's money. So I think it's a little bit easier for me, and I don't have to be as price sensitive. But I'm definitely still very bullish on Lyft. I'm an angel, so I can afford to take a lot of risk. I look at the portfolio across the board as where I'm trying to create value instead of putting everything on just one company. So that's how I look at it.
So have you been surprised to see shares of Lyft drop 42% since the IPO? What do you think investors are missing, given the fact that I know you said you remain bullish here?
Not really. I think it's normal. It's, you expect it, especially with a big incumbent like Uber, doing all kind of things that could impact Lyft stock. I just look at it more of a long-term thing. There's a path to profitability. It could probably happen in a few years. And I just, have a strong conviction for founders like, the founders in Lyft. At the Afrotech conference I mentioned, in front of 10,000 black folks, the founder, John Timmer, was actually there speaking. And stuff like that kind of just gives me a little bit of confidence to people like him. He talked about the relationship between Lyft and the drivers, because we know there's a lot of controversy about whether they're going to be contractors or employees. And just hearing his details and hearing him explain his vision for the future gives me a lot of confidence in the company.
Although I don't need to tell you, market sentiment has shifted where, investors are a little, or maybe a lot more, less tolerant of companies that have projected losses for years to come. Has that change in sentiment reached the circles you run in?
Yeah, we hear the rumblings, but we don't really think like that. I know VCs and institutional investors have to, look at things a different way. But for us, we're angels and we can afford to take more risks. Like I said, I look at a portfolio of companies. I'm going to make 100 investments, and you're looking at that as opposed to just one company. So can I, sell my stock and get some liquidity? Yes, but I don't really have to do that. I'm not in a need for it, and I feel like I can take a little bit of risk because regardless of what happens, it's going to be profit for me regardless.
Cam, I'm just wondering, if you look across Wall Street, you look across celebrity circles, et cetera, if there's an investor or a set of investors that you admire and that you've learned a lot from over the years.
Well, I've learned a lot, the most from the guys at Upfront Ventures in LA, which is one of the largest early stage VC funds in LA. I was an entrepreneur in residence at that VC fund, so one thing that drew me to them is there's this VC there named Mark Suster. And when I was trying to get into the tech space, I was trying to learn a lot. It was very intimidating. But I went to his blog and I saw that he was somewhat of a Mr. Miyagi. He was a guy that was giving a lot of game out, and I feel like a lot of people hold the information and don't want to give it out. So I developed a relationship with him. He gave me the opportunity to be an entrepreneur in residence. And when I was in there, I saw companies coming in there pitching, talking about liquidation preferences and valuations and so much stuff. It was the best crash course for me, and it gave me a big jump to be able to go out and do the tech startup entrepreneur thing.
Finally, we're entering an election season. There's so much talk about Elizabeth Warren, wealth tax, tax on the wealthy, vilifying those who have means. What do you make of that? And I wonder, is that going to create a weird collision of feelings, especially out in California, where obviously it runs heavily blue?
Yeah, I hear a lot of opinions about that stuff, and I know that there's a lot of people that don't want they feel like the Democrats or Elizabeth Warren is coming to take their money. But the way I see it is, I'm focused on the conditions in our communities, specifically the African American community, and I believe that a lot of people in our communities believe that the conditions are not as good as they are, or they're far worse than they are in the rest of our country. And I think that stuff like that has to change, and any Democratic or Republican candidate that is looking to get the black vote needs to talk about those issues.